On November 18, 2022, in a federal courtroom in California, the woman once called the imprisoned. The next Steve Jobs was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. Her company had been worth $9 billion. Its technology never worked, not at the end, ever. And here's the question this story is really about. Not how did she lie? The lies were almost simple. The question is, how do you raise the better part of $1 billion over 12 years for a machine that does not work from some of the most powerful people in America? The answer is uncomfortable because it isn't about her, it's about them. This is the anatomy of the fraud everyone wanted to believe. Every great fraud begins with a story the audience already wants to be true. In 2003, a 19-year-old Stanford dropout named Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos with a story engineered for its moment. The pitch: hundreds of laboratory tests from a few drops of blood from your fingertip. No needles, no vials, no waiting. A machine. She called it the Edison, small enough for every pharmacy in America. Cheaper healthcare, earlier diagnoses, lives saved. And around the product, a second story: herself. The black turtleneck borrowed from Steve Jobs' wardrobe, the deep, rehearsed voice, the dropout genius arc that Silicon Valley treats as a birthmark of greatness. If you wanted the next Apple, and everyone wanted the next Apple, she looked exactly like what you'd been told to look for. And understand why the costume works, because this is mechanics, not vanity. Investors, like all of us, run on pattern matching. Nobody can verify a diagnostic machine in a 40-minute meeting, so the brain grabs the nearest proxy. Does this look like the last world-changing founder I read about? The turtleneck, the voice, the dropout story. None of it is evidence, Zada. All of it is resemblance. And Silicon Valley had spent a decade teaching everyone that resemblance was enough, under a slogan that works fine for software and catastrophically for blood. Fake it till you make it. An app that doesn't work yet can iterate its way to working. A blood test that doesn't work yet is just a lie with a lab coat on. Theranos imported the Valley's most forgiving rule into the one industry where it kills. There was one more ingredient, and savor it, because it will decide everything. Secrecy. Theranos showed almost no one how the machine worked. Trade secrets, they said. Stealth mode. In any laboratory science, that's a red flag the size of a building. In the Valley's mythology, it was proof of ambition. Of course, the revolution is hidden. Revolutions always are. Now the machine itself. The evidence here is brutally short, which is the point. The Edison never reliably did what was promised. Behind the curtain, only a small fraction of Theranos tests actually ran on its own devices. The majority ran on ordinary commercial analyzers, the same machines any lab uses, with the tiny finger prick samples diluted to make them fit. And the results the Edison did produce were unreliable. This might have stayed a Silicon Valley fable. Vaporware is practically a genre there, except for one decision that turned hype into harm. In 2013, Theranos signed with Walgreens, and the tests went live in more than 40 stores. Real patients, real blood, real medical decisions, made on numbers a courtroom would later hear were not to be trusted. Remember that when we get to the verdict, this was never just investors gambling. The machine was tested on the public, and now the exhibit that carries the thesis. Don't ask how much money Theranos raised, ask whose money it was. The Walton family, the Walmart fortune, around $150 million. Rupert Murdoch, the media empire, about $125 million. The DeVos family of retail and politics, roughly $100 million. Add the family offices, the statesman, even board member General Jim Mattis with $85,000 of his own dollars. Retail, media, politics. Notice the pattern? Now look at who's missing from that list. The venture funds that specialize in biotech and healthcare. The investors who employ scientists, who run technical diligence, whose entire job is to know whether a diagnostic machine works. The people best equipped to check are conspicuously absent from the cap table. The smart money in healthcare never showed up. The fraud was funded almost entirely by money from outside the field it claimed to revolutionize. Same pattern on the board of directors. George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, former secretaries of state, former senators, a four-star general, titans of diplomacy and war. on the board of a blood testing company, not one person whose career could evaluate a drop of blood. That's how the machine stayed hidden for 12 years. Secrecy kept the experts out, prestige kept the questions down. Who interrogates a company vouched for by Kissinger? And fear did the rest. Fear of missing the next Apple. Every investor who didn't look closely was making the same trade. I'll accept the story, because verifying it might cost me my seat on the rocket. And notice how the trap tightens with every name that signs. This is the part nobody says out loud. Due diligence is expensive, awkward, and slow. So the moment a famous name joins, everyone after them quietly outsources their checking to that name. The Waltons are in? They must have looked. Murdoch's in? He doesn't gamble $125 million on a whim, except each of them was thinking the same thing about someone else. Stack enough prestige and you build a circle where everyone assumes the verification happened somewhere else in the circle, and it happened nowhere. Even the general's $85,000 did work here. When an insider puts in his own savings, it reads as the ultimate signal of confidence. Skin in the game is supposed to prove someone checked. It only proves someone believed. Theranos didn't fool the smart money. It simply went where the smart money wasn't. Every con of this size dies the same way. Someone inside stops wanting the story to be true. The someone was Tyler Schultz, a young Theranos employee who saw the lab from within. His grandfather, George Schultz, sat on the board. Think about the geometry of that for a second. The whistle was blown from inside the founder's own shield of prestige by the grandson of the man lending her his name. His information reached John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal. And in October 2015, the story broke. The tests weren't running on Theranos machines, and the machine's own results couldn't be trusted. Then the dominoes. Federal lab regulators sanctioned the company in 2016. Walgreens walked. In March 2018, the SEC called it a massive fraud. Criminal charges followed in June. And by September 2018, Theranos, $9 billion of story, no longer existed. In January 2022, a jury found Elizabeth Holmes guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. That November, 135 months in federal prison, and, together with her partner and former company president Sunny Balwani, $452 million in restitution. She entered prison in May 2023. The next Steve Jobs became inmate number 1 of the Silicon Valley fraud era. But if the verdict only says she lied, the lesson evaporates. So here's the thesis, one last time, as a tool you can keep. The Theranos fraud had 3 load-bearing walls: secrecy sold as ambition, prestige standing in for proof, and fear of missing out doing the work of due diligence. Knock on those 3 walls in any pitch you'll ever hear. A startup, a fund, a coin, whatever lands in your feed next year wearing a black turtleneck. The technology changes. The architecture of belief doesn't. Because the most expensive sentence in finance is still the same one that built Theranos. Everyone else is already in. 12 years, $9 billion of paper value, 4 guilty counts, and a machine that never worked. So, honest question for the comments. Which of the 3 walls would have caught you? The secrecy, the famous names, or the fear of missing out? Be specific. The investors on that chart had the same confidence you have right now. If autopsies of money like this one are your thing, that's what this channel does. Booms, busts, and the stories that sell them. See you in the next one.